Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, welcome. Thanks. Sorry for the delay. As I mentioned last class, I'm in Brooklyn, New York, right now, and I had some troubleshooting issues getting the whole internet thing going in this bunker, as it were. So I apologize for that. Yes, so thank you. Welcome again. For those of you, maybe this is your first class, welcome. The syllabus is on Blackboard. The slides from last time are on Blackboard. The recording of the last lecture is on Blackboard. So there's a ton of stuff on Blackboard. Good morning. So if you did miss last class, all of that stuff is available for you on Blackboard. You could also feel free to email me. Also, I should mention, I'm getting emails. Okay. I think that students sometimes think that I have the ability to, that I have SPNs. I don't have SPNs. I wish I had SPNs. I would definitely like to add as many people as I can to the course. But unfortunately, I don't have SPNs. So if you know somebody who is trying to get into the course, please tell them to email Dr. Susan Seipel. She is the undergraduate advisor, and she is the person who has the ability to add people via SPN. She may not be able to add people, but if let's put it this way, if there is a way to add people, she is the person who can add them. So I have a few emails this morning about asking for SPN, so I'll let them know that. But if you happen to know somebody trying to get into the course, please tell them to do that. Her email address is online. If you just Google Dr. Susan Seipel, Rutgers, her email address pops right up, okay? So I should mention that. And tell your friend or relative, I'm sorry, I wish I could. I wish I could add people. If I could, I would. I want people in this class. Okay, enough about that. Let's close this. Before I get started, are there any, oops, hold on. Oh gosh, don't end meeting. No, cancel. Are there any questions about anything? And also, yay, by the way, yay. Good morning, it's a good day. Sorry, I'm having, it's a good time, good day. All right, well, I will share my screen. Here we go, share. Okay, great. And I'll make this big, slideshow. Great. And let's see if I could adjust this. I noticed, oops, noticed when can I just make myself bigger and not have all these other windows? Let's see if this works. Oh, that's better, I guess. Here, maybe I can make myself here. Well, all right. That's a little bit better. I noticed when I was watching the recording, oh yeah, ooh, that it was a little distracting to have the other stuff, like the other participants kind of like nestled underneath me. So I'm trying to minimize that today. All right, now that I have this, let's see if I can get my chat box up at the same time. 1 second. All right, 1 second. Here we go, chat. Boom. Where's that? Something in the chat box. 1 second, guys. Sorry about this. I'm still figuring this out. All right, so this goes down small, 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 small. Lost my chat box. 1 second. Participants. Okay, there's my participants. They're back. Good. Oh, and okay, and I got the chat box back. Thank you, Abish. Okay, you're gonna have to help me out with this one. Abishek Shin.
Just Abhi is fine.
Abhi, sorry, Abhi. Thank you for, so Abby was kind enough to actually put the Dr. Susan Seipel's email address in the chat box. So if you or someone you know is trying to get into the chat box, get into the class, please see her email there and send her an email and tell her I told you to, okay? Tell her I told you to email her. And she's very nice. Okay, can everybody see the slideshow? Cool, and it's big and everything. It's not like small and like weird. Okay, great. All right, good to go. All right, so welcome back again. This is Plant Kingdom, second class. And today we're actually gonna cover probably the most important core concept of the course. And what I mean is the concept that we talk about today is going to be a concept that comes up, I don't know, almost every class. So when we go through it today, there's going to be a lot of new words and there's going to be a lot of things that might sound confusing. So why I'm mentioning that is don't worry. So if we're going through this today and you're just overwhelmed and it doesn't seem like it's making any sense, I lost my chat box again. You know, this is, all right, here. Can somebody write something in the chat box that might help me pull it up, or even like, hi, or something? Very annoying. All right, hold on. I'm gonna stop sharing this. Okay, good. It did pop up. Great, thank you. And I'm gonna reshare. All right, well. Okay, well, we'll just get going, and I can't see the chat box right now, but if you write something in chat box and I'm not addressing you, just go ahead and unmute. All right, so we're going to talk about alternation of generations. It's going to sound crazy. It's going to sound scary. Don't worry. We're going to talk about it a lot of times going forward. So just hang in there. The reason why we have a whole class devoted to it is because it's a very complicated, it's not very complicated, but it's a complicated topic. And it's good for you guys to kind of grip it at the very beginning of the course and start to wrestle with it as versus like trying to make up for lost time later. It's just a good thing to keep in mind now. So the last time we reviewed the syllabus, we talked about plant kingdom, right? Why plants are important, the domain eukarya, right? The different divisions in the plant kingdom, and we briefly discussed taxonomy and binomial nomenclature. That was what we did last time. Oh, and you guys had to read a little thing. It wasn't long. Like I told you, it's kind of like almost a magazine. So what I'm gonna do now, this is not for a grade. I just want to practice using Zoom polls and I want to see that it works, and also kind of get a sense if you guys did read the thing. Again, this is not for a grade. This is not for a grade. You think of this as just for a participation. Okay. So I'm going to launch this poll, and hopefully you guys should be able to see it. It's the first time I'm ever doing this in a course. So do you guys see a poll? Yay. Okay, great. So it's basically, this is a multiple choice. We can go through it together if you want. So the first question asks, again, this is not for a grade. Many species that are new to science are already known and used by local people in the region of origin. It is therefore critical that one choice is the local people ask plant scientists how to use the plant. One choice is plant scientists leave those plants alone and do not do research on them. And one choice is any benefits derived from those species contribute to the well-being of those local people. So those local people who already might have known about the plant that was discovered and new to science. So pick one of those. The next one is protecting biodiversity is, you have the choices of important, but ultimately the only species worth saving are those that benefit humans. Important, and humans have the ethical duty to care for both the planet as well as our own needs. Not important, because nature has no value. And not important, and most people today agree that we have the right to cause a species to go extinct. Is it helpful if I read the questions or not really? Probably not really, right? You guys can just read it. Beatrice asked if we have to submit once we're done. I don't think you do have to. I think if you just click on all the things, because I can see, I'm actually watching in real time. Looks like about 15 people out of the 33 in the course have already finished the 4 questions. So I don't think you have to, Beatrice. I'm kind of new. This is the first time I'm ever using this poll thing. So I guess no. Is there a button that says submit? Okay, then hit it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you guys for helping me with this. I think this is kind of a neat thing. I never used it before, so. Okay, wow, those numbers are popping up. Good, good. We're getting there. Just a few students left. And again, this isn't for a grade. This is just for participation. Okay, I give you guys about 1 minute more or so to submit. Okay, giving you guys about 30 seconds. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, and I'm ending it. Okay. All right. So now I think I can share the results to you. So let's see if this works. Okay. Can you see the results? Can you see what people answered? Yay. Okay, great. So let's talk. Thank you. Let's talk about this real quick. All right. So the first one is many species that are new to science are already known and used by the local people in that region of origin. And so it's critical that, and if you had done the reading, the correct answer was that any benefits derived from those species actually contribute to the well-being of those local people. So maybe this wasn't so true in the past, but nowadays, if a new plant species is discovered somewhere, and especially if it's actually being used by local people, let's say for medicine, it's completely unethical to just take that plant out of that area to go do science on it somewhere and not actually provide some way to contribute to the well-being of the people that live in that area. So that's very, very important. Next one was protecting biodiversity is, and the majority of you picked important that, and humans have an ethical duty, ethics again, right? To care for both this planet as well as our own needs. Yes, that's, if you read the reading, yes, because, you know, we do have to care for ourselves. We're an organism. We have to nurture our young and, you know, care for our needs as a society. So that's true, but we also have a ethical duty to care for this planet and be stewards for this planet. So that was the right one. 3 countries, Brazil, China, and Australia, have had the highest number of newly described plant species for several decades. Why? And if you had done the reading, and most of you looks like it did, they have both hot spots of biodiversity, which means areas with a ton of species in a very small area, but also a lot of actual scientists and taxonomists working in those regions. And so that's why they kind of are overrepresented in terms of how many species are described, because of just how much effort they have on the ground to actually look for species, and the fact that they have so many species in the hot spots, the ability to describe them. And then lastly, when a potential new plant species is found and collected. So some of you selected scientists use DNA alone to determine if it's new to science. Well, we nowadays we do use DNA, but we don't use DNA alone. We do use other things like morphology. What does the flower look like? What do the leaves look like? Those kind of things. So yes, we do use DNA, but we don't use DNA alone. A better choice was, it can take a very long time to determine if it is new to science and named. So there was an example in the reading about how, you know, certain plants, they might have first been discovered over 100 years ago, and then it's only recently been determined that it is indeed an actual new species. So that was what I wanted to get you guys to understand. Okay, that worked okay. Polling, new thing, great. So thanks for doing the reading. I hope you guys enjoyed or learned something from it. It wasn't difficult reading, as I mentioned. There's a lot of pictures and graphs and things like that. So cool, good. Great. So today we're going to go into this great detail about alternation of generations. Before we can do that, we're going to have to do a little review of mitosis and meiosis. Now, you guys are biology majors, and I think the majority of you are seniors. So the concepts of mitosis and meiosis should not be new to you, but you might need a little bit of a review. Then we'll talk about alternation of generations. And then we'll talk about a switch in dominant generations when we get to more higher evolved plants. So let's get going. Okay, first let's talk briefly about meiosis. So, whoops, there we go. Sorry, mitosis. I gotta move. You guys can't see, but I see all this stuff in the way here. Mitosis. So what is mitosis? Well, basically mitosis, first and foremost, only occurs in what are known as somatic cells. And somatic cells are a scientific way of saying body cells. So a somatic cell is like skin cells, teeth cells, hair cells, eye cells. Basically any cell that has nothing to do with reproduction is a body cell, somatic cell. So mitosis occurs in somatic or body cells. And they occur in cells that are diploid or 2N. And so here's where we may need a bit of a refresher. So hold on there for a second. But mitosis is a process of nuclear division. So a cell has a nucleus and the nucleus is going to divide. It's usually accompanied by something called cytokinesis. Cytokinesis is when, if you have a cell and the nucleus divides and then the membrane goes around the two nuclei to make two separate cells surrounded by a membrane, right? That's cytokinesis, the cleavage of that. But just because mitosis occurs does not mean that you always have cytokinesis. In fact, there's a lot of examples in plants that we'll get to later in the class where you have mitosis happen and cytokinesis doesn't happen. So it doesn't always happen. And after mitosis, so in mitosis, you started with a diploid body cell, right? Let's say in my skin. That diploid body cell had the nucleus divide, and let's say in this case, cytokinesis happened. And the result is two cells or two daughter nuclei, if you don't have cytokinesis, but let's just say two daughter nuclei. And each of those has the exact same chromosome number as the original cell. So original cell diploid, mitosis happens, you have two cells or daughter nuclei, two daughter nuclei. And they also are diploid. They also are diploid. So chromosome number of the daughter nuclei is the same number as that of the mother cell. And that's what we call, that's the name of the cell that undergoes mitosis, mother cell, mother cell. There's longer words to describe it, but for this class, mother cell is fine. And then I give you kind of a nice little summary here, right? Mitosis, you have a 2N or diploid mother cell, mitosis happens, and then you end up with two daughter nuclei that are also 2N. So why mitosis? Well, mitosis allows things to get bigger. If you're a little baby and you want to grow into a grown up, right? Your arm has to get bigger, your legs have to get bigger, you have to grow more skin, things like that. So mitosis is for growth. And just like it's for growth in humans, it's for growth in plants, right? You can't go from a seed to a full giant plant without mitosis occurring. Mitosis is also used to repair. So if you injure yourself, right? Let's say you scrape your knee or something like that, you have damaged skin cells and maybe even muscle cells, right? That need to be remade. And so the cells next to the injured cells are going to undergo mitosis to create new cells of skin and tissue and things like that. And in plants, the same process happens, right? It's used for repair. Okay. So that was a review of mitosis, a quick one, right? Let's go through meiosis briefly. So mitosis was for the production of body cells. Meiosis only deals with reproductive cells. So meiosis, if you look up the definition, ultimately leads to the production of gametes, right? Gametes, it's egg and sperm. And gametes are haploid or 1N. So the products of meiosis have half of the chromosome number than the mother cell. Meiosis is still a process of nuclear division. It's also usually accompanied by cytokinesis, but not always. And you still end up with, I shouldn't do that. You still end up with two daughter nuclei. The only thing is that now the daughter nuclei have half the chromosome number that the mother cell had. And meiosis technically has two stages. So this is talking about meiosis 1. So here you go. You got a mother cell that's diploid or 2N. Meiosis 1 occurs, and the result is two daughter nuclei that each, why did I lost my thing? I'll have to fix that. 2 daughter nuclei that each have half of the chromosome number that the mother cell had. That's what it should say. I'll have to go into the slide and fix that later. Okay. Meiosis 2, basically you have those 2 daughter nuclei that already have half the chromosome number as the mother cell. Meiosis 2 is kind of like mitosis in that each of those daughter nuclei that each have half of the chromosome number as the mother cell, they're going to divide again so that you have 4 daughter nuclei total. 4 daughter nuclei total. So here's that nice schematic again. So you have the mother cell that's diploid. Meiosis 1 occurs and you have 2 daughter nuclei that each have half the chromosome number as the mother cell. Then meiosis 2 occurs and each of those daughter nuclei divide such that now you have a total of 4 daughter nuclei and each one is half the chromosome number as the mother cell. So this should be a review considering this is usually a class taken by 4th year biology majors, but I think it's important to just review so that you can be oriented and because we will be using the terms meiosis and mitosis a lot in this class. Okay. Now we have to make a distinction. We have to kind of pull this apart a little bit because so in meiosis in humans, in human beings, meiosis leads directly to the production of gametes. So this is kind of a funky slide. And I want to see, can I make it bigger? Yeah, I noticed that the lines I was drawing last time were too thin. So just look at this slide and what I want you to notice is, look, you have a 2N or diploid individual, right? Like a grown-up human. And in that grown-up human, there's going to be sex organs. And in those sex organs, let's say this is a sex organ, right? And the sex organ is going to be composed of diploid cells, mother cells. Even if they're in the testes, we still call them mother cells. So mother cells that are diploid. Let's say this is in the testes. Like, let's say meiosis occurs and the result is 4 daughter nuclei that are each half of the chromosome number. So let's say this guy here and here, since they, for some reason, put gender symbols on, I don't know why, positive and negative, I guess. But the point is that in humans and other organisms, after meiosis occurs, you have gametes. It's just how it is. This is not the case in plants. So, oh, before I go into that, just in case this whole like haploid diploid thing is sounding confusing, although it shouldn't, but maybe it is a little bit. Let's remember, right, why this even happens. So for every time a new organism is made, it's made because you have the combination of sperm and egg that come together and you have a new organism. In order for the resulting offspring to have the identical chromosome number of the parents, each parent only can contribute half of the chromosome number. So this is showing you here an example with humans. So here, like here is, we're going to make a new individual, right? And you start off with a mother with a diploid mother and a diploid father, in that they both have, in the case of humans, 46 chromosomes. The sperm can only have half that number, and the egg can only have half that number, because when sperm and egg combine during fertilization, the resulting offspring has to have the same number of chromosomes as the parents. That's why we do that. That's why we have we don't have a choice, but that's why meiosis happens, because this is how sexual reproductive organisms are able to have the same number of chromosomes once fertilization occurs. So in humans, you have meiosis, and the result is gametes, egg, and sperm. And whenever in this class, if you hear the word gametes, just think egg and sperm, gametes, egg, and sperm. However, in plants, why you gotta be complicated plants, right? Like plants are complicated in that they don't go directly from meiosis to gametes, egg, and sperm. They have another step, which is spores, So in plants, meiosis does not lead directly to the production of gametes. In plants, meiosis leads to the production of spores that are haploid. And the spores are going to grow into plants that are haploid plants. The entire plant is haploid. I know this, what? And then that haploid plant is going to be the thing that produces gametes, egg, and sperm. What does that mean? That means that plants have two phases or two generations to complete one life cycle, guys. Hello, two whole generations, haploid individual, diploid individual, same individual, two phases. What? That's, okay. So before I get carried away. So what? Two organisms, haploid organism, diploid organism, one individual. I don't understand what's going on. Okay, so back up a little bit. This concept of multiple phases of a life cycle for one generation of life is more common in your brain than maybe you even think. Because, for example, this is not the same as what happens in plants, but this is an example that you can kind of like, okay, yeah, that makes a little sense. So think about a butterfly. So a butterfly can't be a butterfly unless at some point it was a caterpillar, right? You have a caterpillar is walking around, caterpillar's eating leaves, doing its caterpillar life. And then one day it goes into a pupa and then it emerges as a butterfly. It's still the same individual. It's that caterpillar turns into a butterfly. This is the same individual. It's not multiple individuals. It's just phases, different phases of life cycle. So this is a good way to start your brain thinking about alternation of generations in plants. It's not quite the same, and we'll point out why in a second, but it's a good way to start. Okay, right. So when you're looking at these later, note, I'm not saying that a caterpillar turning into a butterfly is what's happening with plants, okay? I'm not saying that, but I am saying it's a good place to start your brain. Okay, so what is alternation of generations? That's the whole point of this entire class, right? You have two generations, a haploid phase or generation, and a diploid phase or generation. And so alternation of generations is the alternation of those two generations. Haploid gametophyte plant, diploid sporophyte plant, one life cycle. So it's the alternation between a haploid gametophyte plant and a diploid sporophyte plant in the life cycle of sexually reproducing plants. Before we could really get into this, we have to get some terms down. So you see this word sporophyte plant. No, it's okay. Sporo means spores and phyte means plant. So sporophyte plant means a phyte or a plant that produces spores, sporophyte plant. And they are diploid, they are 2N. And the sporophyte plant is going to be the plant that undergoes meiosis to produce these, these haploid spores. Gametophyte plant, remember? Gametes, egg and sperm, gametes, egg and sperm, gametes, egg and sperm. Gametophyte plant, gameto means gametes, egg and sperm, and phyte still means plant. So the word gametophyte plant means a plant that produces gametes, egg and sperm. And the way that it's going, and it's haploid, and the way that it's going to produce that egg and sperm is going to be via mitosis because it's already haploid. Every part of the gametophyte plant is 1N or haploid. Okay, like I said, if today seems like what, just know that this is going to show up over and over and over again in the class. This is just the first time of getting our heads around it. Okay, a few other terms to know. So on the sporophyte plant, you have sporangium, or plural sporangia. That is an organ that makes spores. And on the gametophyte plants, right, the plant or the phyte that makes gametes, egg and sperm, you're going to have organs that make egg and sperm. The organ that makes sperm is called an antheridium, or the plural is antheridia. The organ that makes and holds the egg, houses and holds, is the archegonium, or plural archegonia. And again, we're going to see these terms lots and lots of times. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through an alternation of generations. And what I'll say is make a note to yourself, either on your pad or something like that, to come back to these set of slides that we're about to go through when we go to when we start to talk about actual plant species. When we start to talk about actual plant species and their alternation of generations, what the slides we're about to go through now are going to be a great place for you to kind of like get oriented. Okay. So make a note of that. All right. So let's go through it. So you start off with a sporophyte plant, right? A phyte or a plant that makes spores. And it's a 2N or diploid individual. On that sporophyte plant, you have sporangia, or the singular sporangium, right? Organs that make spores, right? You can't make a spore unless you have an organ that makes a spore, right? So you have to have a sporangia. Inside of that sporangium are those spore mother cells that are diploid. Those spore mother cells are going to undergo meiosis 1 and 2 and cytokinesis to produce a tetrad of spores. Tetrad is a fancy word to say four spores. Remember, when we went through the meiosis review, one mother cell goes in after meiosis 1 and 2, 4 daughter nuclei, right? So hence the tetrad of spores. Notice the color change on this slide. We started with kind of a grayish purplish color, and now we're in a kind of an orangey yellowish color. That's showing you a loss of ploidy, or in other words, purplish gray represents diploid and orangey yellow represents haploid. Okay, so you have your tetrad of spores, the result of meiosis. This occurred inside of the sporangium. Let's talk about one of those spores. So there were 4, but we're just going to talk about one for simplicity. That spore is going to grow into the gametophyte plant, right? The phyte or the plant that produces gametes, egg and sperm. So that spore is going to germinate and grow. It's going to be one spore, and then it's going to, I'm a plant, I'm a gametophyte plant. So that's going to happen. On that gametophyte plant, the gametophyte has to make gametes, egg and sperm. So if it's going to make gametes and egg and sperm, it has to have an organ that makes sperm and an organ that makes and holds an egg, right? So on the gametophyte plant, you have the antheridium and archegonium, which we defined in the previous slide. Antheridium is going to make sperm. Archegonium is going to make egg. Eventually, boom, egg and sperm come together. This is just a simple schematic here, right? It doesn't mean necessarily that the egg and sperm come from the same plant, right? They can come from other plants, but the point is egg and sperm, both haploid, come together. And if 2 haploid things come together, what's the result? Boom, diploid cell, or a zygote, right? And so, sorry, 1 second. Yes, so egg and sperm come together. The result is a 2N zygote cell. That 2N zygote cell is going to grow into the embryo or the young plant. And that embryo or that young plant will eventually grow into the sporophyte plant. So this is the alternation of generations in the most simplest way. Alternation of what? A sporophyte plant, whoops, and a gametophyte plant. 2 generations, 1 life cycle. Usually when I teach this class in person, when I look at the class right now, everyone's like this. That's so although I can't see you guys, I'm assuming that's how you feel right now. It's every single time I finish a slide, it's just like, hang in there. Yeah, it's okay. Again, it's okay to feel like that right now. Don't worry. I hope, but I kind of miss looking out to the sea of 40 faces and just saying, like, what? I know. Thank you. All right, so I should mention I have a few processes listed here, right? I have meiosis, a process, cytokinesis, a process, right? Fertilization, a process. Just know there's other processes going on here. For example, mitosis and cytokinesis, right? So like you can't, mitosis and cytokinesis is happening almost everywhere here, because remember, mitosis and cytokinesis deals with growth, mitosis deals with growth, right? So if you're a sporophyte plant and you need to grow an organ that makes spores, the way you're going to grow that is via mitosis. So not only is it there, but it's, you know, if you're a organ and you're going to make a mother cell, right, you have to grow it, right? If you're a spore and you're going to grow into a gametophyte plant, you need mitosis, etc. So just because it's not in this slide, just know that mitosis and cytokinesis is what's allowing things to grow and make these organs and these parts of plants, right? So keep that in mind. Right? You can't be an embryo plant and grow into a sporophyte plant without mitosis and cytokinesis, right? You need that. You need that. Okay. It's not easy to talk for a long time. Always have hydration around because, yeah, you get dry. Okay. That was an overview of alternation of generations and kind of like an abstract, right? We weren't talking about any real plant. We were just like using the term sporophyte, gametophyte. It wasn't like a real thing, right? But now that we went through that slide, let's go through it in a real plant, in a real plant. And the fern, Dr. Casper, when he used to teach this course, he always said the fern is the best example of alternation of generations when you're first learning that concept. Oh, and FYI, for those of you who are going to med or trying to go to med school, right? If you're planning on going to med school and taking the MCATs and all those other things, for some reason, alternation of generations shows up in a lot of those exams. Or so I've been told for students that I've had in previous semesters who've taken like the MCATs and things. So keep that in mind. I don't know why they want to, maybe because it's it is cornerstone of biology, but just an FYI, I've been told that it does show up there. All right, so let's talk about it in a fern. So here you go. So think about this like a clock, right? Not a clock like on your phone, a clock, you know, with arms and things. So at 12 o'clock right here, we got the sporophyte plant of the fern. So this is a fern. Like if you're walking through the forest and you see a fern, you're seeing the sporophyte plant. And the sporophyte plant is diploid. On that sporophyte plant fern, we have to have organs that make spores, right? Because it's sporophyte. So if we were to look closely at for example, in the fern, if we were to look closely, so here's a fern leaf. This whole thing here is a fern leaf. If we were to look closely at that fern leaf, here's the bottom of that fern leaf. There's these little dots, and inside of those little dots are sporangium, right? Sporangium are the things that make spores. So I bet you can guess what these little dots are. Yep, spores. So in that sporangium that's on the sporophyte plant, you have you're going to make spores, right? So inside of that sporangium, you have the spore mother cells. Notice the colors again, right? Kind of grayish purple, diploid. Spore mother cell inside of that sporangium. Spore mother cell, 2N, is going to undergo meiosis and cytokinesis. Meiosis purpose is to have like in half, chop in half the number of chromosomes. And hence the result is a haploid or 1N product. And in this case, 4 spores, right? Tetrad, fancy word for 4. Okay. So we're going to go zoom out of the, so here now we'll talk about one spore, just like we did on the previous slide, one spore of the 4. We'll just talk about one. That spore is going to grow. Whenever you think of the word grow, you should think mitosis, right? Growth. One little spore, one cell spore is going to grow into a gametophyte plant, which in the ferns first starts out looking like kind of a green blob. And I know it's not green on this slide, but trust me, a little green blob. And then ultimately in the ferns looks kind of like a green heart. Aw, right? Green heart. Let's look. Look at this. There you go. That is your gametophyte plant in the fern's little green heart. Well, it's a gametophyte plant, right? Phyte plant, gametes, egg and sperm. So on that gametophyte plant must be some organs to make egg and sperm. And spoiler alert, yes, there are. There's archegonium, or plural is archegonia, that make and hold the egg. They are there. They're kind of like at the top of the heart. And, oh, and I should, do I circle them? I don't. Okay. Just so you know, for this drawing, here, I'll keep using green. So this is a bunch of archegonia. This is one archegonium. This is a bunch of antheridia. This is one antheridium. Inside of the archegonium is an egg. There it is. The antheridia are going to make lots of sperm. So there's them swimming out. See? Swim, swim, swim. Okay. And where are those organs? They're on the gametophyte plant, right? Because gametes, egg, and sperm. Okay. All right. Yep. So this is showing you where the antheridia are, or singular is antheridium. It's showing you where the archegonia are. And there you go. Egg and sperm that are each 1N. Look at that. Keep the colors in mind, right? There's still that gold color. Ultimately, egg and sperm will join. Boom. 2N zygote. 2N zygote. Notice that here is where egg was, right? Egg stays. Egg stays. Sperm swims and leaves, but egg stays. So wherever the egg was, because egg stays, that's where the new sporophyte plant is going to begin, right? So look, here is the 2N zygote cell, and it's in the same place that the egg was, right? Because egg stays. And so ultimately via mitosis, this 2N zygote will grow, and it's upside down, but ultimately grow into the new sporophyte plant. I know this class is a lot of information, but we're almost done. Yep, so there you go. Here you go. I'll use the same colors that I have here for you to just know what the heck you're looking at. So look, 2N embryo or young plant. Here is the 2N embryo or the young plant coming out. Look, here's its little root. And what is it coming out of? Well, wherever the egg was, and the egg must have been in an archegonium, and the archegonium must have been on a plant that's able to produce gametes, egg, and sperm. So that means that this young sporophyte plant, this embryo, is growing out of the gametophyte plant, right? So there's that heart thing on the bottom. Eventually, over time, the purple, in this case, sporophyte plant doesn't need the gametophyte plant anymore, and the gametophyte plant will just disintegrate. And then you will be back to here, where every part of this is the sporophyte plant right now. So this is 2N, this is 2N, this is 2N, etc. Okay. This might seem pointless now, but trust me, when we go to other classes, you're going to be very happy that we covered this in this detail. Oh, see, yeah, see, I already had done it. Okay, so it's not quite the same. It's similar to the concept of like two things occurring in one life cycle, but it's not the same thing as caterpillar, butterfly. Mostly not the same thing because a caterpillar is not haploid. Caterpillar is diploid, butterfly is diploid. So not quite the same thing, but you see where it's similar. You know, two things for one life cycle. Okay, so when we go on in this class, we're going to talk about the alternation of generations as it pertains to different phyla of plants. And when we start, we will be talking about what I call, or what we can refer to as like the more primitive plants. And when I say that, I mean that they are lesser, they're earlier, like in evolutionary time. Over evolutionary time, right? Evolution is occurring. So you can think of plants that are more recent being maybe more higher evolved in the sense that they've had so many millennia to do stuff, to evolve. When you go to those higher evolved plants, we have a switch in which generation is dominant. What do I mean by that? Okay, so when you're talking about the quote unquote primitive plants, and I don't like that, but we'll have to think of a better way to describe that. But the earlier plants in evolutionary time, the more primitive plants, the gametophyte generation is dominant. So that's for all the non-vascular plants, the mosses, the liverworts and hornworts, which we'll start talking about soon, I think in next class. What that means is if you're walking through the forest, or even if you're walking through the subway, I've seen moss in the subway, or walking on a city street, and you see moss, and you're like, look, moss. What you're looking at is the gametophyte generation. However, if you're looking at the more later evolved plants, right, like a tree or a fern or a flowering plant, when you look at that tree, you're looking at the sporophyte generation. So the point is there is a switch in dominant generation. In the non-vascular plants, the gametophyte generation is dominant. That's the generation you see with your eyes. In the vascular plants, the sporophyte generation is dominant. Okay, I think we're almost done. This is just some pictures to show you that. So here's an example of a moss. I'm gonna use a different color. I'll use red. So this is a moss. And if you were walking and you saw this moss, a lot of times these things here wouldn't even be on it. They're only on it sometimes. Whereas most of the time when you see a moss, you see this kind of green fluffy. Well, that green fluffy is the gametophyte plant. And then every now and then on a moss, you'll see sporophyte plant, which is this kind of golden looking stick coming out. And the point is that this is where the gametophyte is dominant. Most of the time, if you think of a moss, if you just think of a moss, you're picturing a green fluffy, right? A green fluffy. And that green fluffy is the gametophyte plant. I just like saying green fluffy, I think. All right. However, whoa. All right. So in the mosses, okay, so there's a question in chat box. What does it mean that it's dominant, that it stays in that form longer? Correct. Yes. So the idea is if you're walking around and you see a moss, what you see with your eyes is the gametophyte generation, because mosses usually exist just as the gametophyte generation. The sporophyte generation in mosses is very fleeting. It's very brief. There's a good chance you could walk by a moss and you won't see the sporophyte generation. However, if you're walking by a tree, you can't even see the gametophyte generation without a microscope. You only see the sporophyte generation. The trunk of that tree, sporophyte. The leaves of that tree, sporophyte, etc. The flowers on that tree, sporophyte. So that's what it means. It's like the dominant generation. If you have these alternating generations for certain plants, one of those generations of the two is the more dominant one. Good question though. Good to clarify that. Remember we just did the generation thing with the ferns? Ferns are nice because you can easily see the transition of that gametophyte generation and sporophyte generation. So remember the heart here, green heart? That's that gametophyte generation. Here we go, another question. Does that suggest one generation here, the gametophyte, is more beneficial? And if so, why do they still go through the alternations? It's not that one generation is more beneficial or not. It has to do with what each generation makes. So in the primitive or lesser, like earlier plants like a moss, the most important thing for them was to spend the majority of your life cycle making egg and sperm. That was the most important thing for their success as a plant, meaning evolutionary success. So hence, they spend most of their life cycle as a gametophyte plant making egg, sperm, egg, sperm, egg, sperm, egg, sperm, egg, sperm. However, the sporophyte plant, they tend to be a lot more long-lived. And the parts that make egg and sperm, meaning the gametophyte plants, have become so reduced you can't even really see them anymore. This will make more sense as we go through the different phyla of plants. But I'm running low on time here, so let me just get through this. Yeah, no problem. So on this is our fern. Here we go on the left, you got the little heart-shaped doodad, right? That's the gametophyte plant. On that gametophyte plant, you have the sex organs, right? Gametophyte, gametes, egg, and sperm. Here's the archegonia. Here's the antheridia. Ultimately, egg and sperm are going to come together and make that two-end zygote that grows into the sporophyte plant. But notice, it's cool. In the ferns, it's cool because you could actually see both with your eyes very easily. So here, that's that gametophyte plant again, kind of doesn't look so much like a heart anymore. And then this thing growing out is the sporophyte plant. So it's just, the reason I include this is because here, sorry, you know, here, gametophyte plant is dominant. That's what you usually see. And every now and then a sporophyte plant might be visible, but not that much. Here, gametophyte plant still visible. You can still see it with your eyes, but ultimately ferns are vascular. So ultimately when you walk by a fern, that's a fern right there. And when you walk by a fern, you don't see the gametophyte plant anymore. All that you see is sporophyte plant. Gametophyte plant is a brief part of its life cycle. Most of the plants that you are used to seeing, if you have house plants, if you walk by a tree, or grass, if you mow lawn, which I didn't have a lawn, but you get my drift. Most of the plants that you see on the day-to-day are sporophyte dominant. Because most of the plants that we see on day-to-day are flowering plants or plants that are able to produce flowers. And those plants have sporophyte plant dominant. Gametophyte plant is highly reduced meaning so small that you usually need a microscope to see the gametophyte plant. Okay, I think that's it. This, I gotta say, this lecture is kind of not that fun. This lecture, alternation of generations. So first of all, it's just a weird concept. It's just a weird concept. We as humans, we don't see, like a human being isn't capable of having two generations, right? Where like, you know, oh, I'm a sperm, I'm walking around, I'm a sperm. And then, oh, now I'm a grown up human. It's weird. So don't worry. Please don't worry. Alternation, if you've read the syllabus, alternation of generations is one of the core concepts of this course. Today, we're just starting to learn about it. It's going to come back almost every class. This is just a roadmap and a kind of first try me by, as it were. When we start to talk about it in each of the plants, then we'll talk about specific players. So there's a question, is it all plant species that have alternation of generations? Yes. Every plant that exists And every plant that has ever existed and every plant that will ever exist has alternation of generations. It's a specific thing that plants have. Specific thing that plants have. Yeah. All right. So, like I said, this is it's a pretty heavy lecture in that it's a lot of new information. What I'd like you guys to do is kind of leave this alternation of generations thing aside for the time being. Just have these slides in your back pocket for when we talk about it later. And I want you for homework to read the next part of that State of the World's Plants and Fungi. It's pages 10 through 17. Again, there's several pages there that are just one picture, so don't get nervous about how much material is there. Next class, now that we know what alternation of generations is, next class we're going to start talking about plants, real plants. So we'll start with the mosses next time, which are the bryophytes. Yep. So with that, that's all I have for you guys today. And I'll take any questions that you have about anything. Syllabus. All right, so I have a question here. Do we need to understand how it goes from 2N spore mother cell to a tetrad of spores? Each spore makes a plant. You don't need to know so for the purposes of this course, this is how detailed you would need to know. You would need to know there's a spore mother cell that's diploid, and you would need to know that that spore mother cell is in a sporangium that is on a sporophyte plant. And that spore mother cell that is in that sporangium on that sporophyte plant undergoes meiosis. And when meiosis is over, you have a tetrad of spores. That's how detailed you have to know it. You don't have to know like the stages of meiosis, for example. So I hope that answers that part of that question. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like you have a spore. The spore is located somewhere. Where? Sporangium, right? It's in the name. Where's the sporangium on? Oh, sporophyte plant. Right, phyte, plant, spore. Okay, plant that makes spores. Got that. And then the spore mother cell undergoes meiosis. Boom, tetrad of spores. Next question was, hold on. There was also each spore makes a plant. So theoretically, yes, but like some spores are going to be better at doing that than others in that like, usually when something makes spores, they make like millions of spores. And the reason they make millions of spores is because not all of them end up growing into a plant. And it's a difference in terms of like, so I'll say for the purposes of our course, yes, if there's a spore, it theoretically grows into a gametophyte plant. Let's see. And then there was another question. Will we be dealing with polyploidy during the semester? Yes, I think we will. We kind of can't talk about plants without talking about polyploids. It's funny. So maybe some of you don't know what that means. Remember I said we have like the diploid individual and the haploid individual. So plants are funky in that they can have more than just 2N for different reasons. But like the plant that I study is actually 4N. Capsella bursiposaurus is 4N, and it's the result of two separate species basically coming together and such that there's 4N. But yeah, I think we will. Another question. For the assignment, are we supposed to just read? Yes. You're supposed to just read it. Just read it. We probably so sometimes like today we had that little poll in the beginning of the course. Sorry, in the beginning of the class. So for the homework assignments, all you do is read. I mean, you could take notes if you want, but I just want, it's a material that I want you guys to know about. And so I just want you to read it. And then I have a question here. When is the first assignment due? So that's separate. So let's stop the share here. And I think I'm going to pull up the syllabus real quick. Documents, Plant Kingdom, syllabus. Gotcha. Here, make this big, make this go away. Make this smaller. Great. Okay. Pull you guys back up and share my screen. Share the syllabus. Here we go. Share. So let me make this a little bit bigger. So this is the syllabus. Syllabus is on Blackboard. Let's go to the different classes, right? So we've done. Let's do this. This is done. Today we did curious plant life cycle. This is done. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about the mosses and the peat mosses, right? The bryophytes. Thursday, we're going to talk about the other non-vascular plants. And then the following Tuesday, right? The 2nd is the first assignment that's for a grade will be due on Blackboard before class begins. What does that assignment cover? Lectures 1 and 2 that we've finished already, these 2 lectures, right? That assignment will only cover those 2 lectures. That assignment will be available on Blackboard, I think, starting on Tuesday, a week before it's due. Nope, that's not right. Hold on. Here, I drew too many things on here. The first assignment that's for a grade will be due before class begins on the 2nd. However, it will be available on Blackboard, I think, starting the 26th. So it's basically like it's available for up to a week or something like that, because it covers only stuff we've already covered. So yes, so that's why I say don't turn things in late, because you have like a week to do them. So don't be one of those people and try to like do it at 8 a.m. on the 2nd. That's silly. Please don't do that. It'll be available for you to pick a good time for you to do that. Okay, stop that. Any other questions? Any other questions? No? I know you guys are just like super stoked about learning about alternation and generation. Sorry. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to end. Thank you guys so much for, I know everyone's like, why? It'll be okay. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Yeah, I hope you have a great weekend. Hope you learned something today. I know it's not the funnest class. If you do end up having any questions that you didn't ask today, just feel free to email me. On Tuesday, I will also be in this Brooklyn, New York bunker. And then I will be back in Michigan this coming a week from today. So I will see you guys next time. Have a great weekend. Good luck in the rest of your classes. Thank you. Take care.